Night settled over the city like a soft sigh, the kind that hints at both relief and worry. In the amber glow of streetlights, you could almost forget the headlines that had defined the last few years: fear, violence, communities trying to hold themselves together against waves of uncertainty. But in 2024, something shifted. Something rare. Something hopeful. And that hope began with numbers. The FBI report was just a document, cold, clinical, printed in black and white. But for people like Officer Caleb Torres, it felt like a breath after years spent underwater. He sat alone in his cruiser at the edge of the 3rd Street overpass, scrolling through the report on his phone while the city hummed beneath him. Violent crime down, homicide down nearly 15%, he whispered to himself, his breath fogging the glass. It felt impossible. He'd spent 2020 through 2023 watching a city fracture, sirens echoing every night, families torn, neighborhoods grieving. His boots had stepped through too many doorways where tragedy waited. He still carried the faces with him, the mother gripping her son's sweatshirt like it was the only thing keeping her standing, the old man who whispered, "Why us?" as firefighters loaded his daughter into an ambulance, the teenager who apologized as he bled into Caleb's hands. Statistics didn't erase those ghosts. But for the first time in a long time, they suggested something else, a turning point. Across town, Mariah Bennett, a community organizer in her mid-30s, stood outside a youth center as the last of the teenagers shuffled out into the night. She had spent years fighting for safety programs, mentorship, conflict resolution workshops, anything to keep kids from deciding that violence was their only language. She'd faced empty meetings, slashed budgets, cynicism from city leaders who preferred quick fixes over long-term change. Now those numbers meant something different to her. They weren't relief. They were validation. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt tighter as she leaned back against the brick wall, feeling the cool night air settle between her shoulders. Down 15%, she murmured. 15. Her eyes lifted to the street where a kid she had once worried might not survive high school now walked his little sister home, backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. He waved at her with a goofy grin. That wave felt more powerful than any graph or press conference. But even in this moment of hope, the truth tugged at her. A violent crime still occurred every 26 seconds. Somewhere, tonight, someone was screaming. Someone was running. Someone was losing the most important person in their world. Mariah closed her eyes. The fight wasn't over. In a quiet kitchen in Ohio, Alana Foster sat at the table with the report folded neatly beside her tea. Her son, Jordan, had been killed in 2022, caught in crossfire outside a grocery store. She remembered the sound of the knock on her door. She remembered the way the world tilted, the way the carpet felt beneath her knees, the way her voice cracked in a way she didn't recognize. She had spent years speaking at town halls, joining survivor groups, sitting on panels she wished never existed. And today, reading that homicides had dropped nearly 15%, she felt a mixture she couldn't quite name. Relief, yes. But also a sadness that wrapped around her like winter frost. She was grateful fewer families would experience what she had. But numbers could not give her son back. They could not fill the chair that remained empty at birthdays and holidays. They could not rewrite the memory of his last voicemail of "Mom, I'll be home soon," a message she still played sometimes when the house felt too quiet. She traced a finger along the paper. "I hope this trend continues," she whispered. "I hope it means something." It had to. Because if everything she had lost didn't somehow help someone else remain whole, then what was all this pain for? In downtown Detroit, journalist Aaron Price sat in a newsroom filled with buzzing monitors and the clatter of keyboards. He had covered crime for nearly a decade: murders, robberies, domestic violence cases that left him staring at the ceiling long after midnight. He'd always believed journalism served the public good. But sometimes, he wondered whether the constant stream of tragedy he wrote about did anything other than terrify people who were already scared. This report, this shift, this moment, it felt different. His editor had asked him to write a piece explaining the numbers. But Aaron didn't want to write statistics. He wanted to write about what statistics felt like, how they landed in the bones of people who had lived through the worst years many communities had seen. He typed the opening line, "Hope doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes, it appears in the quiet drop of a number that once represented broken lives." For the first time in a while, he felt like his words could do more than inform, they could heal. But he also knew the truth behind the numbers. A violent crime every 26 seconds meant the country still had a long road ahead. It meant families were still being shattered. It meant neighborhoods still lived with the echo of fear. Progress wasn't victory. It was momentum. The kind you either used or lost. And then there were the people whose stories rarely made the news, like Marcus, a teen in Chicago who had spent years walking with one shoulder raised, constantly prepared to run or duck. In 2021, he lost 2 friends. In 2022, he nearly lost his brother. By 2023, he stopped going outside after sunset because he couldn't stand the sound of sirens anymore. But in 2024, something shifted. For the first time, Marcus realized he had gone 2 weeks without hearing gunshots outside his window. 2 weeks. He noticed more kids playing basketball after dark. More parents talking outside their doors. More laughter drifting down the block. He didn't know anything about the FBI report. He didn't know about percentages or crime patterns or national trends. He just knew the air felt a little lighter. He kept waiting for the moment the fear would return. It didn't. Not that night. And sometimes, a single peaceful night could feel like a miracle. Across America, people digested the news in their own ways. City councils celebrated cautiously. Officers exhaled. Families of victims held their grief close while acknowledging the small light growing at the edge of a long, dark tunnel. But beneath the hope was a shared understanding. The drop in violent crime doesn't erase what came before. It doesn't guarantee what comes after. It simply shows what's possible. The country stood at a crossroads, torn between the relief of progress and the reality that behind every statistic was a person, a family, or a ripple of lives forever changed. The FBI report didn't tell the whole story. But in 2024, for the first time in a long time, it revealed something the U.S. desperately needed: not a cure, not a victory, but a reason to believe that the worst moments did not define the future. A reminder that change, even slow change, was still possible. And for millions of Americans, families, survivors, officers, organizers, children, that was enough to keep hoping. That was enough to keep fighting.